Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We are here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. We all deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel good. And here's what we're doing in the space as cannabis nurses before we get started on our show.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare, and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers. There you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis. Hi, everyone. My name is Sherri Mack, and I'm the Vice President of Nursing and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. And I'm a cannabis nurse, patient, podcaster, advocate, and very passionate here about changing the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really, really excited to have our guest on today. The guest is a man of varied interest and expertise in the plant medicine arena. So Matthew Myro, counting musician, actor, writer, personal trainer, high performance coach, and podcaster among his talents and skills. He was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. The values of a hard work and education would become a mainstay in his life. After graduating with honors from Cleveland State University in 2003, Matthew moved to San Francisco to pursue a graduate degree in philosophy, cosmology, and consciousness from the California Institute of Integral Studies. His introduction to the medical cannabis industry would come the following year in 2004 while earning his master's degree. Matthew was hired by a fellow graduate student as a plant care specialist for medical cannabis nursery that provided clones to local dispensaries. The next 15 years were spent as an entrepreneur and consultant in cannabis cultivation, building or consulting on dozens of small and medium grows, and owning a nursery that provided tens of thousands of clones to Harborside, Oakland, which at the time was the largest medical dispensary in the country. In 2018, Matthew joined EM2P2 Cannalinks team and currently serves that organization as its Vice President of Marketing and Cannabis Science. He is the host of Edge of Cannabis Medicine podcast, where he interviews experts and innovators on the cutting edge of all things pertaining to medical cannabis. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Sherri. It's really great to be here.
It's so good to be here. Listen, I took a deep dive into all of your website, your personal website, your story. what you're doing, what you've done, and there is a lot to unpack here. You've done so much in your life, and I'm really honored that you've taken the time to share yourself with our viewers.
I'm
And
so happy to be here. Yeah.
this is good stuff. So let's start from the beginning, right? I just have to say, I pulled up your story and how, you grew up, because this is, we talk about cannabis, we're going to be talking about psychedelics, we're going to be talking about a lot of things today, but I want to know about you and your history and what brought you to where you are now in your life. And it starts with growing up in a progressive, non-religious home, sounds like.
Yeah, it really does. I was always given the opportunity to just think for myself, tons and tons of freedom and space. And I think the greatest skill that my parents taught me was to be curious. And I take that with me wherever I go. And so I'm a bit of an experience junkie, and you mix that with a dose of curiosity. I've gotten into a lot of different things in this life.
Yeah. Yeah. So your personal history, growing up, so because here it is now, you have a big job, you're working with Canalinks, you have an amazing position, in the vice president of marketing and cannabis science, you were growing cannabis, you were involved in it. You took a hiatus. I was reading in your biography on your website, your story about you really kind of taking time off and really developing a sense of self. And I want you to share with our viewers because it's very, very rich. It's a very rich story.
Sure. Where do you want me to start?
Well, you know what? Let's start. Why don't we start with this? Let's see if I can do this. Let's start about your story, Matthew. This is about you right here. Here we go.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could start with a funny story if you like.
Yeah. Let's start there. That sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. So my introduction to cannabis is pretty funny, I think. So when I was 14, one of my best buds won tickets on the radio to go see Pearl Jam. And my parents were like, okay, this will be your first time that you get to go to a concert by yourself, but we're dropping you off and we're picking you up. So, okay, no problem. And we're there, we're waiting for the show to start. And I'm like, that is a weird smell. What is that weird smell? My buddy's like, oh, that's weed, bro. It's like, really? It smells just like the strange lamp in my parents' bedroom. Huh. Okay. So I think a lot of the openness and the expansiveness around my upbringing came from probably my parents themselves kind of being hippies and enjoying cannabis and enjoying each other with it. And I, as long as I got good grades, they were like, okay, whatever it is that you're doing is not inhibiting you in your life at all. It seems like it's accentuating it. So we encourage you to keep doing what you're doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So basically your personal history with cannabis and plant medicines and psychedelics. What has your journey been like?
Yeah. So I first smoked cannabis. It was at my very first fish show in Cleveland. And so I'm one of the rare people. I know the exact day that I first smoked cannabis, and I know exactly what music I was listening to because I can look up online the set list, which is kind of fun. But it opened me up. It opened me up. I was raised very spiritual, and I found cannabis to be a tool that accentuated everything of the spirit. I could see better and hear better and feel better in all these different ways that I never knew I could before. And so
consciousness. That reminds me.
Consciousness.
That reminds me, there was a 70-year-old nurse who shared her story with me. She said she'd been smoking cannabis since she was 17. Her father carried it in his pharmacy. She said the first time she did it, she felt like her head cracked open and consciousness poured in, and it changed her whole outlook. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it drove me to pursue a graduate degree in consciousness because
let's talk about that. Because here it is, right? We know the drivers. As a nurse, I've been a nurse for a long time, 35 years, right? And in my 35 years of nursing, I have realized that the drivers of health live outside the conventional system and are modifiable by us as humans, right? Mm-hmm. And the 4 pillars of health have been instrumental in my own healing. And so it seems like you as well, right? You've you took the time to really, you hunkered down. Like one of the stories that you shared in your bio was all about when you went away to college and you really developed on performance and you really took the time to study yourself and healing and consciousness.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Very much so. The four pillars: physical, mental, spiritual,
Oh,
emotional.
here it is. Okay.
Where are we at?
Nutrition,
Okay.
connection, movement, and rest. So what are we feeding not only our bodies, but our minds? Who are we connecting? Are we connecting with our bodies? Who are we connecting with? So it's mind, body, spirit, but in this time and space, it's like connection. How do we connect with ourselves? How do we connect with our peers? How do we connect with our family? How do we connect with our loved ones? How do we connect with the unseen world? Connection. Nutrition. What are we feeding our body? What are we feeding our mind? So it's the same. It's mind, body, spirit. And movement, right? So movement isn't just about exercise. It's about moving energy, right? It's the whole energetic component. And then rest, right? Resting isn't just about sleeping, right? Everyone thinks resting is doing things that bring out the relaxation response. What activities can I do in my day-to-day life that's going to promote the relaxation response and enhance that? So those are the types of things. And then each of those four pillars you can fill in with other different activities. And it's brilliant. And you can't live without these things. You can't live without these things. Pills and procedures. This is the thing is we're as nurses, we're looking to integrate, right? How do we integrate the conventional system with the holistic therapies? And when patients are coming to us, it's like, okay, how do I heal? It's like, you got to look at all of these different things. It's not just one thing. And so those four pillars are those different things, the connection, how we connect, the different activities, the rest, nutrition, movement. So yeah.
Yeah, so important for sure. Yeah. Okay, so with my journey with all of that, so I have a lot of influences, mostly from my parents. I have an incredible relationship with both of them, and they're still happily married after 47 years and adorably in love. It's really something to witness for sure. But I got a lot of training on the physical side of things from both my mother and father. My mother went to graduate school for sports medicine and exercise physiology when I was tweener, I guess, the 10 to 13 age. And by the time I was 13, she was like, okay, your father's got a gym in the basement. It's time for you to start going down there and lifting weights with him and his buddies. I said, okay, cool. So from a very young age, I was instilled with fitness as being critical to being a human. Yeah. And then the whole family turned into vegetarians and focus became very strong on nutrition. And so really being conscious of everything that's going in my body, how I'm moving my body, and then with the opportunity to explore different spiritualities because I wasn't raised with one single religion. I got the mind, body, spirit thing was really rocking for me by the time I actually got to college. And so at that point in time, it was like, okay, cool. I know what I want to study. I want to learn. I don't want to use college as a trade school to learn this thing so I can go get a job somewhere. I'd much rather use college as was traditionally used as an opportunity to expand knowledge and understanding about the world that we live in. And I feel pretty blessed that I had that opportunity, and I took full advantage of it and dove all the way in.
That's really important for the youth too, to understand college, because, I've got a couple of kids, one of my son's looking into going into college and he's like freaking out it. And I'm like, no, we don't need to stress over this. This is the last thing we want to do. This is supposed to be enjoyment and enrichment and self-discovery. What's important to you and how do you want to live your life, right? This is what you have to look at as an opportunity. And this is so that's amazing that you had that support.
Yeah, I feel very grateful to have that support. Yeah, for sure. And so it allowed me that space to, like, as you were talking about, to take this deep dive, to go in and learn as much as I can about all these different areas and come up with my own systems. I have a 6-pointed system that I like to use: eat, move, breathe, think, feel, flow. And
eat, move, breathe, think, feel, flow.
Right.
That's great.
Thanks.
That's really good. Well, we think about the breath, right? As nurses, ABCs, Airway, breathing, circulation. The breath is the most important thing, right? When we inhale, right? Breathing brings in oxygen, right? Airway, breathing in the oxygen, inhaling ananda, inhaling bliss. When we're using cannabis as medicine, that's one of the things we teach people how to do, is to intentionally inhale. If you're going to inhale, do it with an intention to heal something.
Yeah.
You know, to create a response, not just in your body, but all areas. The cannabinoids are pleiotropic, working on multiple different physiological systems at the same time. So yeah, so I love that, incorporating all of that. So what does your routine look like for health and
Routine? Like
wellness?
oh
Yeah.
yeah. So meditation is a critical aspect of it. Movement. I spent a couple years apprenticing under a Tai Chi master in Marin County, California. And so Tai Chi became a very big part of my regular practice in movement. It's a moving meditation, really. Journaling. Yeah. So my mornings are always include meditation, a little bit of movement, usually with Qigong or Tai Chi, and some journaling.
That's amazing.
Somewhere in the, I'll fit a workout in there somewhere. Reading is critical for my life too. I love reading. Always have some kind of nonfiction book going, and then almost always have some kind of fiction book going too to lighten the load. So yeah.
So you're taking care of yourself, and that's important. You know, I call the hour of power, you know, multiple hours of power, they add up, you know, doing things, you know, to nourish your mind, body, and spirit, and to help you to feel good, and to help you to grow, and to learn, and to evolve and self-actualize, right? That's what it is, right? How do we become the better versions of ourselves? Are we happy with who we are? And how can we go forward? And so let's talk about psychedelics, you know, because we are in this whole psychedelic renaissance, you know, that it's going on. You know, the buzzword is microdose, and then there's macrodose, and then we're hearing set and setting, and we're hearing integration, and everyone's like, what is all this? You know, so let's talk about your journey using psychedelics as medicine and for consciousness and exploration. What has that been like?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I started young with that as well. At 16, what was the mid 90s, I guess, at the time, and things were much simpler then. So it seems. So there's a lot more going on right now. But just like with everything else, I had the freedom to explore these areas. And once I tried psychedelics, I started with LSD, and then did mushrooms pretty quickly right after that. And it was like, oh, that's a game changer. Everything that I thought about, the way that I could look at my own mind, changed. And all of a sudden I saw all these different things and all these different capacities. And if I closed my eyes, there was an entire world that was exposed to me that there was no way my imagination could have possibly produced. And it's like, okay, there's so much more happening than I thought. And it for a little while there, it propelled me into cavalier use, I guess would be the nice way to say it.
So not medical use. It was more of a recreational focus.
It was very much recreational. I was probably tripping a couple times a week for a couple years there, and just was like, okay, wow, just go.
Yeah.
And then I took a few years off to reset and to really find my way back into it. And that happened when I moved to California. And the graduate program I was in, all the professors there met at a conference around consciousness at the Esalen Institute. And they say that they realized that they needed to start a graduate program around consciousness because they were standing around discussing the consciousness of a styrofoam cup. We're like, okay, there's a lot here that we could unpack, and that people would probably get a lot out of it. And so every year, the whole program would take a pilgrimage to the Esalen Institute. And a part of that pilgrimage was to have a psychedelic journey in the canyon amongst the redwoods there. And professors would come in with fruits and engage us in all kinds of conversation and just try to like help us expand more and more and more and come into these things. And I was like, okay, so this is the way to really use these tools as tools, to use them with reverence and to completely switch it. And so instead of a couple times a week, it switched to more of a couple times a year, and to really make sure that I'm engaging with it and taking the time to integrate my experiences afterwards.
There you go. And that's important. That's the integration starts the day you decide to consume psychedelics.
Yeah.
Right? Literally, because it's your intention. You're creating something that you want to bring forth. It's the mind manifesting, right, that they talk about. How, right? And it's through spoken word, it's through writing, it's through experiencing. And so when people go and have these journeys, and so doing it in a way that just that facilitates growth and healing, right? So there's all these young kids are having fun, and my role as a nurse is to keep everyone safe, right? But for those that want to use it as medicine, these psychedelics are such powerful plant teachers, and how they interact with all areas of, like, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And every single time that I engaged with a psychedelic substance, I'm humbled, truly humbled. Yeah, it's like,
Great.
yeah, really, really amazing.
And it's a fascinating communion, because I've come to believe that anytime we bring anything into our body, whether it be breath or food or drink or whatever it might be, or a psychedelic substance, it's a communion. And most of these other things, we don't have the opportunity to understand the nature of the consciousness of that thing that we're communing with. But with psychedelics, you actually do. It's like, whoa, okay, so these things have their own voice, they have their own agenda. And when we commune with them, it's an opportunity for us to engage with a consciousness inside of ourselves that is not ourselves. I remain fascinated.
Yeah, me too. Amazing. And then, so what do you think? Let's talk about the future. Let's get into cannabis and psychedelics, and what is the near and medium term? Let's talk about the future of psychedelics, right? And what that looks like. One of the things, what does the near and medium term psychedelic future look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So in near term, it continues to explode with this renaissance, if you will. The stigma around it is lessening. People that I'd never thought would have questions about psychedelics all of a sudden do. They're starting to see psilocybin in the news. They're starting to read some of these studies that are coming out of Johns Hopkins that are just blowing everybody away. It's like, oh, wait, this is something that works better than any antidepressant that's on the market, and any anti-anxiety pill that's on the market, and it has had better effects. It's like, okay, this really needs to be looked at. And I think I think in the near term, the curiosity is going to swell. And this is the ripe moment to really start to put the framework around how we can use it in the most beneficial way for everybody. And I think what we're finding too is having the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy is a really, really great path forward. And unless you have, I don't think you always need to have a therapist around when you're going to do a psychedelic journey. I think that's probably the safest way to do it if you're a novice. But to know that you have somebody that's a professional with experience that you can speak to about your experiences, and that integration aspect, creating the education around that is critical. And I know that you and Elizabeth have been doing a lot of that. It's going to help the industry greatly.
Well, and the thing too is you have to think of right now is the access to points that people have to be able to get these. People are going to festivals. People are getting it from their friends. People are going to Instagram. You go to TikTok and you can get whatever, right? So it's really about safety. And also the nuances is you're working with your brain and your brain chemistry, right? And consciousness and who you are. And this is really, really important. People need to take this seriously. I'm all for having a good time, but I'm all for being safe and for being conscious. And if you're going to use something, we were like, intention, using a substance with intention. If you're going to have a good time, you need to understand what that's doing in your body and how it's going to impact you. What you do today is going to affect your tomorrow for sure. Yeah. And so having that information up front and really, not sugarcoating it, that it isn't all fun and games. Psychedelic journeys can be very, and then the whole journey, it's a bad trip. It's not a bad trip. It's what you needed. Right? It's like a bad trip is you're judging something. And so it's really, it can be uncomfortable. And so we really, as nurses, or just really want to prepare people that, this isn't the end all be all. This isn't the to solve your problems. And as we're working with patients doing psychedelic coaching and consulting, and they think that this is just like the THC craze, right? People started cannabis as medicine. Cannabis is new. I want to get my THC and I want to get my THC and more. And that's not the case, right? Less is more. And we have to allow our bodies to equilibrate, right? To get back into balance and to utilize these rich experiences to integrate into our day-to-day life so we can show up as the people we want to show up being. So that's what we're seeing more and more here, is that people needing to understand that the balance, that it's not just the substance itself, it's everything else that you're going to be doing after you take that substance, those activities, because those aha moments. So you have this rich, whether it be a deep dive or you start microdosing and you start having these epiphanies and these realizations. And then, you got to think about, if you're changing, you're rewiring your brain chemistry, rewiring what you think, you have these new things, and you have to be able to process that. And and people that are, a lot of new people that are new to psychedelics that do the deep dives, they're like, I can't talk to anyone about this. They're going to think I'm crazy. You know what I mean? So then it's this, who do you talk to? So that's why going back to the roots of how people used to do this a long time ago, in indigenous settings and cultural settings, with community surrounding to support, to hold space for people. That's what I do not want to go away, because it truly is. You need to have that support, and people need to know that they feel safe and that they can share. And that's one of the next questions too that's coming up. The whole thing about the problem of mystical experiences. That was one of your questions on the thing that we're going to talk about. We need to talk about that, because it's things that people aren't talking about, right? And you can go to these different shows. I watch all of the psychedelic shows. I watch all the documentaries. And it's just really awesome just to see clinicians and people come forth and to be able to state that these things are not what you normally would experience. And it can be really hard for people to grasp. You have this deep mystical experience and your world is turned upside down. And so, having the ability to be able to connect with other people and to be able to process, and so to not have it be, if you're going to do something, you want to do it so it's going to impact you in a positive way, right?
Absolutely.
You don't want to have regrets. That's what it is. It's, what is it? Prepare and prevent instead of repair and repent.
I like that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Definitely.
So what about your experience? Let's talk about that with mystical, the problem of mystical experiences.
Yeah, and I say it's a problem because our Western culture has put everything in its own nice little box. Religion sits here. That's for Sunday mornings. Mm-hmm. And then everything else around your health is because a doctor is the be all end all and knows everything, and you listen to them implicitly. And the two of those never go together. And then you have your little work box, and you have your little friend box, and we forget that we're whole beings. And it's never one thing. It's always a confluence of everything. There's 30 trillion bugs that live inside of you, making you who you are. And there's, it's always everything. And we try to think that it's always one thing. And the Western model of medicine, where you have a problem, you get a pill, and then hopefully it goes away. It's just not real. And so much of what we have to do is be able to integrate these disparate aspects of ourselves. And one of the things that cannabis and psychedelics especially do is bring up these more mystical questions and these mystical experiences. And some of these things that were saved for the Francis Assisi's of the world and the William Blakes of the world are now accessible to the regular person through sometimes just like a little capsule of psilocybin. And all of a sudden you can have these mystical experiences and this direct communication with whatever deity thing you want to think exists without the intermediary of a priest or a rabbi or whatever it might be.
Okay, Matthew. So I want to hear about one of your mystical experiences.
Okay. Yeah, that's fun. All right. So my first experiences with ayahuasca, I went to Brazil, and Went there for 2 weeks, and we had ceremony with a group and a shaman for every other night for 2 weeks. And the first journey was incredible, so much fun. It was just like, wow, this is what a blast off. I get to just hang out in a four-dimensional, multicolored crossword puzzle for all this time. Great, this is so cool. Second journey, I was like, okay, how deep does this rabbit hole go? And I think I might have had a bit of a psychedelic overdose because my consciousness was pinpoint bouncing around all of existence, and my physical body was doing all sorts of crazy stuff that everybody was trying to hold me down. I almost ruined it for everyone. It was real bad. But
Really?
yeah. So that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
And then the next journey after that, I was given almost complete sobriety with one image, and that was it. But the one after that was where the mystical came in. And I feel like I was just rocketed into this cathedral, I guess is the best way that I could put it. It's a dome-shaped room where the walls were multicolor and moving with language at all times. And at the center of it was a tri-being. It's the best way I could put it. It was the confluence of masculine, feminine, and mix of both energies. And it had three faces, and it would turn, and it seemed to be the center pillar of this room. The room was almost like a torus. It had this toroidal movement going all the time, and this being at the center of it. And I was able to sit there and ask whatever questions I wanted and receive answers. And it was the first time that I was knew for sure that I was communing with a consciousness that was not my own. That I was getting answers to questions that not only would I not have an answer to, I couldn't even begin to imagine and create some kind of answer that I was able to receive from this being. And I'm not going to get into the details of what those questions and answers were because I feel like that's pretty personal for me.
Yes.
But it was as mystical as anything I could possibly imagine.
Wow.
It was world shattering. It was world shattering.
Okay. So now you have that experience, you come back, you have all of this information. Now what? What did you do?
Yeah, luckily I have an amazing cohort of people that I was there with and then also came back home with. And so we had a lot of time together to just be like, okay, this came up for me and this came up for me. Have you ever had any kind of experience like this? Yeah, I have actually. It was like this. Okay, cool. Well, how did you work through that? Well, I did it with this, this, and this. Wow, okay, those are really cool techniques. I'm going to give that a shot. And the community.
Those were like integrative techniques. So they were actually different things for you to do, whether it be go praying in nature or chanting or moon bathing or sunbathing or water ceremony or whatever. It was an activity that you did to be able to bring that experience in, to integrate that into your life. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And to speak with experts also. And so the folks that have been doing it for years. I was lucky enough to be in a community that had elders in the space that did start doing the work in the 50s and the 60s with psychedelics and carried that through even all the prohibition periods. So to be able to have that kind of wisdom accessible is priceless. And with the internet, you kind of have that all the time. You don't really need to have those people sitting in front of you. You can watch a video of them sharing their wisdom, and it's quite a time to be alive.
Oh God, I know. Absolutely. I know. Overstimulation for sure. So now let's go back to cannabis because we're cannabis and psychedelics. And so here we are, and I want to talk about what you're doing too with Cannalinks. So the current state of cannabis is medicine right now. Let's talk about the future, and then let's talk about Cannalinks and what you guys are doing.
Great. Yeah. So there was the green rush, the great green rush. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, states started realizing they can pass all these laws and they can get the voter approval to be able to have cannabis be legal in a medical way. And then now it's for adult use. And so much of it is driven by commerce, basically. Like people want to make as much money as they can. And they thought that this was a great way to jump into it. And it grew. And now we're seeing the tipping point where it's like, okay, the industry can't actually handle all of the growth. And the adult use world is falling to pieces. that's just unsustainable. And people are starting to take another strong look at the medical cannabis industry. It's like, right, yay, finally. And so much of this happens. I see it on an individual. This is sort of a sidetrack, but on an individual basis, like if somebody's converting to a new religion, they get really hardcore about that for a while and kind of preachy and really dogmatic until it really settles in to who they are and they integrate it into the person that they were before they found that religion, and they become actually pleasant to be around again. And so
I get that, Chief. I get that. Yeah.
yeah, and so I feel like that kind of happened with the cannabis industry. It's like everybody was like, go full speed forward, go, go, go. And everyone's kind of like, oh wait, maybe that's not best. Like how can we integrate this into our culture, into our society in a way that's going to be most beneficial? Sure, people can make their money if they want to, and everyone's always going to want to be able to smoke a joint if they want to, but like let's actually take the time to look at this plant as a medicine. And that curiosity is growing. And so I see the future, and there's the near future of cannabis is, as we were discussing. I think that a schedule change, the DEA is probably going to change it from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, which will allow for a lot more access to research, most importantly, and then access to people, secondly. And I say people secondly because the way that we're going to reduce this stigma is through extensive research that'll be able to educate the people to be able to get the appropriate medicine. And so people don't walk into a dispensary and say, okay, cool, I want the 32% THC, 0% CBD, because that's what my buddy told me is best. Like, no, I want the person to walk in there and say, hey, I understand that a nice balance. So maybe 18% THC and 11% CBD, but I also know that CBG is really helpful for my glaucoma. So I want to see at least a 2 to 3% of CBG in there. And I know that these terpenes have these effects. So the educated patient is the future that I look forward to the most.
Yay, which is amazing. And that's what we want too. We want educated patients to make good decisions, because we know as nurses, cannabis works as medicine. We know that it works. However, you need to utilize it in a way that it's going to work for you, and it looks different for everyone. And you're right. Look, looking at the medicinal piece of it, and the different types of products that are out there that are being offered to patients. I'm hoping, as this medicalized approach starts to come around, that we get better products for patients, because that's what my job is, to help patients shop, at dispensaries. And so, which is great. And so, we go to a dispensary with a patient, and the patients are like, they wanted me to get this, this, and this. And I said, well, that's because they're teaching you they're selling you what's on sale, and they're teaching you what they've been taught. So, and so as nurses, what we're trying to do is, and we never want to make anyone wrong. It's just, and it's basically, we just tell it's a business. And so here we are, we want to help you nuance and to learn the best things that you can choose for you. Because everyone's like, oh, no concentrates. No, concentrates are great. You can buy a concentrate and you can make a butter out of it. So I teach people how to shop concentrates and make their own, right? So there's, it's like, so it's really nuancing of looking at the different types of things that are out there, and helping patients to have the agency to do their own self-care, take the interest in themselves to be able to learn this and to experiment and also fine tuning. And with CBD, and that's the other big thing that we found, and I'm seeing this again with psychedelics, is people are thinking that the THC, the more is better, and they're missing the rest of the plant. They're missing the rest of the cannabinoids and the other things. The goal of taking cannabis as medicine is to take the least amount to get the most therapeutic response below the threshold of having what? Side effects, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
and that's different for everyone. And so how can we do that in a safe way? So rescheduling. So what would that mean what would that look like? So say we did reschedule to a Schedule 3. What does that look like?
Well, before I get there, I just want to talk a little bit more about Cannalinks and how.
Sure. Yeah. And then yes. And I want to let's go about
how we took a look at the industry as it stood and said, this is ridiculous. If we're ever going to have cannabis be accepted as a medicine in this country, we needed to follow the model that most everybody in the country understands, to be what cannabis, or I'm sorry, what medicine is. And the model that we have, for better or worse, is you have an issue, you go to the doctor checks you out, sees what your issue is, and then prescribes a medicine for you to be able to take to address that issue. You go to your pharmacist, and the doctor sends your prescription to the pharmacy so that you can go pick that up. And there's a continuous conversation there between the pharmacy, the doctor, and the patient. And with cannabis, it's completely disjointed. And because of the DEA laws, because of the Schedule 1 DEA classification, the doctors weren't able to make prescriptions. They're only able to make recommendations, and it's illegal for them to have any kind of relationship with a dispensary because of the way that things are. They could lose their license to practice medicine. And we said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be some way where we can make sure nobody's breaking any laws, but there's still the transparency where a doctor can know what a patient is purchasing. Because could you imagine going into CVS and you're like, okay, I have irritable bowel disorder, and you walk up to, I don't know, the woman in the makeup aisle, and you say, I have irritable bowel disorder. She goes, oh, cool. Well, I don't know. I heard maybe Imodium can help you out. I don't know. Why don't you go try that in that aisle? And that's more or less the experience of going into a dispensary.
Right.
But so what we did is we created a completely secure and a completely transparent platform where whenever one of the patients, a member patient of Canalinks, goes to one of our member dispensaries, we have a connection with the point of sale system of that dispensary, so that as soon as that patient makes a purchase, it goes into their record, and the doctor can go into the Canalink system without ever having to mess with the dispensary or anything, or ever giving a prescription, but see what their patients are taking. And then the patients have the opportunity to have a survey to share exactly what they took, what way have they administered it, and the effects of it. And so, and at the same time, see the certificate of analysis from the labs. So the doctor can say, oh, wow, so my patient made these purchases, and I can look at how it affected them. It's like, okay, so this terpene and cannabinoid breakdown is what worked really well for them. Now I can make a real recommendation to this patient without having to prescribe anything, but I can recommend something that we can all see is working for them. And I feel like it's absolutely necessary within the industry, as long as we're still having to deal with all of these back channel things around the Schedule 1 situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So Canalinks: connect, learn, heal, and save.
Yeah. Yeah. So within Canalinks, unfortunately, this is the old version, where we have a whole new version that's going to be coming to the public within the next few months or so. It's a little cleaned up, and it's a lot more access. And so we have a learn section, which is critical, and it's kind of my baby. And so
Let's see.
It's not quite there. It's not ready yet. So don't go
Yeah,
clicking
okay,
around.
all right. I won't be okay, well, we'll have you come back on. We'll have you come back on.
Yeah, but dozens of articles and videos in order for a patient to go and self-teach and learn as much as they can about the different aspects of cannabis. And then the healing aspect, obviously, to be able to grow with their physician, to keep the dialogue going so that they know what they're getting and healing along the way. And community. So we built in there, we call it MyLinks, and it's sort of more or less like a Reddit platform, but solely for medical cannabis, and a place for our member patients to go in there and say, hey, I had this issue, and this is what's going on for me. Anybody have any recommendations? And so we can utilize our peers, not just the professionals, because as you're learning, it's kind of patient education focused right now, and we're the ones that almost know more than the physicians in some cases.
Yeah, I learn the most from my patients, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they're the ones that are driving, seeing, if you see something over and over again with this group of patients, right, then it just makes sense that you should probably study that, right? So if you're seeing, a certain group of patients are taking a certain amount of things and they're having the very similar results, well, that should fuel our research down the road. And how cool is that you guys are going to be able to track that?
Yeah, and we have some really cool things coming down the road too, where we'll be able to biomonitor the patients. We've been developing a smartwatch, a medical grade smartwatch with with a manufacturer, and we're using it for a separate product that we have with EM2P2 that focuses more on social impact, working with underserved communities like veterans and indigenous and parolees and justice impacted individuals. But we're able to take what we're doing there using this smartwatch to biomonitor these vitals, and we're going to bring it over to cannabis. So in real time, you'll be able to see what the effect of you taking that medicine is through an app, which is pretty cool. We think we're doing some cutting edge stuff, and I think it's going to really change the industry for the better.
I think it is too. I'm so grateful to be part of it. Absolutely. Amazing. Amazing work. So let's get back to, I want to get back to Schedule 3 and what that looks like.
Yeah.
Opinion. What do you see? Because you're visionary, and you've been in this space for a very, very long time. In the background too. So understanding legislature and policy, et cetera. So tell me what you see happening. It's okay. Schedule 3 happens. Now what?
Yeah. So like I said, research is everyone's going to be able to do whatever research they want without any kind of limitations like you have now. And so that's going to make a very, very, very big difference. And patients will have more access to it. Doctors won't be scared to lose their licenses because they can finally prescribe cannabis instead of just recommending it. And then I see a future with formulations. And so a lot of what happens in traditional medicine is you have your network for your insurance, where you have these drugs that work in your network, and then you have these pharmacies that you can go to within your network, and that's a thing. And I see something very much like that happening within cannabis. And biosynthesis is a really, really, really cool technology, where all of a sudden, if you take a cannabis plant that you grew, and it has its different percentages of its phytocannabinoids and its terpenoids and all flavonoids, and you can only get this much of the THCV, but you can get this much of the THC, and you can get this much CBD, but you can only get this much CBL, and all these. So all of a sudden, all of these really minor cannabinoids that are going to be able to be studied on an individual basis can be biosynthesized through a process of using yeast, almost like brewing beer. So the price to make a pound, if you will, a pound of CBN as a powder is not going to be any different than THC. Because as of right now, the extraction process is absurd. You can't get enough of these minor cannabinoids from their existence in the plant. But once we can study them on an individual basis, and once we can biosynthesize them in a way that we have access to them in equal quantities, then we can start creating these formulations,
and that gets exciting.
It's its own pharmacy at that point, which is really cool.
It is really cool. So it gives people options, right? There's always going to be those that want to grow their own, make their own, have their own, private, and then there's going to be those that want to have the pharmaceutical model. And so this allows more cannabinoids to be opened up to more people for reasons that they want to feel safe with the doctor, right? You got to figure there's so many different models, but what a great way to be able to open up the door for more people to have access, and then insurance coverage too, right? Would that mean insurance might be able to take care of it if we move to a Schedule 3? Do you think insurance companies will be on board?
They will. They are already coming on board. So
I know.
We're making it happen.
Making it happen. Yeah. Well, what about CBD? Will that change the CBD marketplace? So we've got, companies that Schedule 3. Will that change how CBD works?
It's hard to say. Yeah. That one I don't know, because it's been so well proliferated and it's so ubiquitous across culture right now.
Yeah.
It's hard to put that back in the tube, the toothpaste back in the tube,
Yeah.
Hopefully we will get more regulation and accountability around it, because you go into the gas station and you can pump a tank full of gas and pick up a bag of chips and a bag of CBD gummies and a pack of cigarettes and walk out the door, and you have no idea. There's no education there, nothing, and you have no idea what's in the product, and there's no regulation around it. And so I hope that, normally I'm a bit of a libertarian when it comes to these kinds of things, like don't tell me what to do, but more regulation around cannabis I think is imperative.
Yeah. And then a little bit too, let's talk a little bit about lab testing too, because you were, how will lab testing hold the key to a successful future?
kind of what I was talking about with the formulations. To
Yeah, the
what,
formulations.
this bullshit categorizations of indica and sativa and hybrid, it drives me crazy. It was a morphological distinction that was based around the size and shape of the plant. And that's it. And somehow it became this thing. It was like, oh, indicas give you couch lock and sativas will give you energy. And hybrid's a mix of the two. And it's like,
Yeah, we're looking at chemotype 1, 2, 3, and 4. Actually, canopies. We use big shout out to Dr. Uwe Bleshing.
I love Uwe. I interviewed him. He was great. Yeah.
We use his platform all the time. Canopies is just absolutely amazing in how they educate and bring research to the forefront, and being able to looking at the different cannabinoids and how to classify them, and chemotype 1, more THC than CBD. Chemotype 2, equal amounts of CBD and THC. Chemotype 3, more CBD than THC. That's the full spectrum products. And then now they're even saying chemotype 4 is high CBG products, right? So we're starting to see that, and then how terpenes can influence that. And you want to look at, those two big cannabinoids that have the impact, the THC and the CBD, and how they influence each other, because they do, and the experience that you're going to have, and how it works as medicine, and how it works with your body. And so having the ability to be able to influence that. But it's true, like in the strain names, that's the thing. That's the other thing. It's so hard. You get a Blue Dream in California is going to be very different than a Blue Dream in Vermont, right? Because of how it's grown, and from cultivating, so.
And it's made up. I remember when we got some clones of something, we didn't know what it was, and we grew it out, and it was beautiful flower, and we didn't know what it was. So went to the dispensary with it. He says, well, what is it? It's like, I honestly don't know the genetics, but this was the mid 2000s, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. And so I was like, how about we call it Lacron James? Made it up. They said, great, we love that. And it's sold like crazy because of the name. And
wow. See,
most of the strains are just made up names. And nobody, unless you know the direct lineage and genetics of everything you're getting, you don't know what's going on. And you don't know if you can trust the people that are selling it to you either, because of the nature of the market. So all of this regulation is going to help a lot. And when we can get away from strains being this or that, and really being able to look at a lab breakdown of the certificate of analysis to understand what's in there, and even these different chemotypes, right? So, okay, great. So you've got 50 different products that are all chemotype 2. Well, you can have 50 different experiences with those products. And it's not because there's an equal amount of CBD and THC, it's because of the different terpenes that are in there. And so I think a lot of what we're starting to get with some of the research is understanding how the terpenes have so much influence on the actual experience of ingesting the medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what's your favorite strain?
I don't have one. I really don't have one.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite way to...
I grew sour diesel for a lot of years, and so I got to know that plant very well. We became very, very, very good friends.
And what did sour diesel teach you? What did that beautiful lady teach you?
Oh, she taught me so much. That was one of the most fascinating things about being a cultivator, is that the 3-month cycle of the plant from seed to flower often mirrored whatever was happening in my life at the time. And I could watch the health of the plants change as my own internal experience was changing. And me being the sole caretaker of this garden, watching them reflect back to me what I was doing. So it really taught me how to clean up my side of the street, if you will, in order to be able to provide the best medicine for the people that would ever have their hands on it.
So that's great. So it encouraged you to take care of yourself. So
Yes.
as you took care of the plant gave you messages. Okay, you're taking care of me now, Matthew. I need you to take care of you, right? The gentle nudge of that beautiful cannabis plant. Amazing. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew, we got a couple more minutes. I want to give you an opportunity to wrap up with your 2-minute elevator speech for our viewers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to wrap up. We're meeting Matthew Myro for the first time. Matthew,
Okay. Number 1, it is always weirder than you think it is. No matter how interesting or how much you think you might know about anything, I promise you it is weirder than you think. That's number one. So that's a fun world to live in.
Yep.
But and as long as you can stay curious and give yourself an outlet and find ways to educate yourself on all the things that you're curious about, everything will keep growing. There'll be less judgments and less stigmatizing of things. And if you can approach anything in life, be it psychedelics or cannabis or people or sexuality or anything with curiosity, I feel like the world is going to be much better place.
Absolutely. Awesome. This has been a great show, Matthew. And today's show was brought to you by Bloom Hemp. Bloom Hemp is a women and nurse-owned national hemp and CBD supplier leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic grown in the mountains of Colorado, tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line. Call 970-404-HOPE to answer questions, and nurses will explain to you how and why CBD works in the body and the best practices. So bloomhemp.com, Green Nurse, for 10% off. All right, let's get rid of that one. And this has been a great show, Matthew. Truly honored to have you on. Matthew Myro at Cannalinks. And remember, everybody, what it's all about. It is truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. I'm going to end this with one of my other favorite videos about how to stay healthy and happy. Hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.